Welcome to this episode of Smart Leaders Sell podcast with Jessica Lorimer, sales coach and leadership expert. I'm really excited to be diving into an awesome topic today that's kind of come to the fore because in the UK we're going through some different experiences at the moment with brick and mortar businesses. And, I've been looking at the trends that are kind of happening within the market. And I thought that really there are no better ways to identify things that will potentially affect our own businesses in the online space, in the offline space, than looking at the market as a whole. And one of the things that we used to do all of the time when I was back in my corporate job was that we'd look at trends. We'd assess trends, we'd look at what was going on in the wider market, and we'd react early. You can probably hear Max snoring today because he's sat on my lap. He's hurt his hip and he's had a couple of anti-inflammatories from the vet. He's actually pretty drugged up, which makes him an absolute joy to have on my lap, although he is like a little furnace and he does keep snoring. So if Scott can't edit snores out, I am very sorry, but he's looking very sorry for himself. So he's going to just join us for this episode. So what we're going to be talking about today is premium retailers or premium brands versus mainstream retailers, and why premium sellers are rocking it and mainstream retailers are being absolutely wrecked. Now, I do want to just quickly say that we've got something extra special that we've just added to the podcast for you in the show notes. So if you haven't been and checked out the show notes before, please make sure you do now, because Scott and my amazing assistant Beth have been beavering away to put in some incredible cheat sheets from all of the deep dive training episodes. So people came back to us and asked for cheat sheets so that you guys could take away the actionable points from each episode. And rather than making you download all of them separately, which I figure is a complete ball ache / ovary ache, what we've decided to do is create a totally free little mini membership portal where all of the cheat sheets will be housed. So as long as you go and sign up, and in the show notes link, you can go and grab a link to the membership. You can create your own login and you can just go and download any of the cheat sheets that you want. So if there's a particular episode that you think, actually, I really like the action points for that and I'd love to map it out in my own business, you can just hop on into the membership portal, grab the cheat sheets, and away you go. And that's totally free to you. There's no catch, I suppose. You just need to go to the show notes and hit the download button on the link at the bottom there. So make sure that you go ahead and do that. Grab all of the cheat sheets and see what you can do, see what you can action for them. So excited about today's episode because obviously it brings in a couple of things that I'm really nerdy about to a certain degree. And obviously with the corporate sales background that I have, I worked for premium organizations, I worked for premium brands, I worked for boutique organizations who weren't as well known. I have never ever worked in a corporate sales environment for mainstream retailers. However, at the beginning of my sales career, I did start off working for a mainstream retailer and working my way up through that company, which incidentally was how I fell into corporate sales in the first place. So I've had a kind of love affair with both mainstream retailers and premium brands since I was relatively young, since I was about 16 years old. And when the news hit the stands this week about big retailers going under, it didn't really surprise me. So some of you may know that in the UK, we've had a double dip recession over the last few years. And we're heading back into this recessive period because there are lots of things going on politically, lots of things going on economically that are changing. And as with any change, things do take a hit. People do sometimes tighten the purse strings. And actually the things that have been affected this time have been things that have actually survived the last couple of dips. And it's really, really interesting. But it is finally time for them to accept a hit. And today's episode is about why things are going wrong for mainstream retailers in terms of sales and in terms of profits, and the lessons that we can take away from them, regardless of what business that we're in, so that actually we future-proof our sales processes. Because what's really important is not that we look at the issue and go, oh God, lots of major retailers are going under, so automatically my sales process needs to be completely revamped. We actually just need to protect ourselves and future-proof our sales process so we don't ever end up in this situation. Okay. Now, obviously, these companies have been working for years, so I'd like to say that they did have a future-proofing plan, but there were some silly mistakes that were made that actually I feel contributed or have contributed to their current situation. So I want to be really, really clear about where I believe those mistakes have been made and how you can future-proof your sales process against those mistakes so that if you ever do end up in a super competitive market, or if the industry suddenly does go boom, or we end up in this saturated space that everyone keeps telling us, you will be able to compete and your business will survive and thrive. So let's talk a little bit about the actual situation. Now, I've been reading the papers. I read the papers every day. I'm obsessed with the BBC News app. In fact, one of my favorite things to do when I'm just sat there doing nothing is to scroll the news. So I read BBC News, I read CNN, or I watch the headline updates. I look at Fox, I look at the major newspapers. I'm genuinely obsessed with the news. And I know that in the online space, the news isn't very popular. And in fact, a lot of people, when they start working for themselves, they start ignoring the news because people feel like it's negative or that they're always hearing bad things. And to a certain degree, the news does report on the stories of the day and the stories of the time, which means that a lot of the time we are seeing things that we perhaps prefer not to see. However, even if you just read the business section, it's really, really important because the things that have been happening over the last few weeks in the UK, and in fact since January, we've seen this trend that has been really, really interesting. So what we've actually seen is that mainstream retailers and restaurants, and I'm going to name a few in a mo, have been going into administration processes, have been, having investor backing removed, have been coming up with plans to cut costs quite severely in their businesses, and in some cases shut down altogether. And the reason for that is that they're just not generating enough profit in their business. The sales numbers aren't where they need to be. And actually it's caused a big enough problem that now people are losing their jobs. Companies are in millions of pounds worth of debt, and actually they're not really sure how to dig themselves out of the hole, and they don't have time to. So it's been an interesting few months, and we've seen some of the major restaurant chains, things that are really popular here. So we've seen Prezzo go through it. We've seen Jamie Oliver's chain of restaurants, Jamie's Italian, go through it. And we're now seeing real life, what I would call real life retailers and not food companies. So companies like Toys R Us, who are a huge, global brand, and New Look, all going down this kind of administration route. What we're not seeing is Louis Vuitton going down the administration route, or Chanel, or Moet, or Gucci. Those companies are not going down the administration route and really have absolutely nothing to worry about if you look at their latest kind of share prices and profit margins. There is a reason behind this, and in fact there are three elements to it. So what we're going to do today is walk through the three elements and look at how you can then use those, like I say, to future-proof your sales process, but also to make sure that you are competing at the right level in the market. So the first thing is that premium companies have a really, really, really specific ideal client, and they weed out based on price. Now, in the online space, and actually in any business, you're always going to have an ideal customer. What we don't always think about is how we are weeding people out. So premium brands, typically, they turn people away or they weed people out based on the financial situation of that potential client. Okay, so they're basically saying, if you can't pay us £1,000 for a bag, you're not our ideal client. Now, that person at some point may save £1,000, they may spend it on a bag and become an ideal client, but they set a standard and they set it out very clearly and they don't deviate from that. So that's the good thing about premium clients, is that they're not, or premium brands, is that they're not afraid to say who they are for and who they are not for. And that's very clear in their messaging, it's very clear in their targeting, it's very clear in how they do business. So for example, you will notice that Louis Vuitton does not have a Facebook group for support. Okay. Louis Vuitton representatives do not sit, in Facebook groups answering everyone's questions and hoping that people will buy a handbag. That's not their style. It's never going to be their style. Their customer support is much more personalized, and they, in all honesty, expect you to either call them or head into a store. If there's something that you have an issue with or you have a question around, they're expecting you to deal with a person, and ideally in person. So we have to look at mainstream retailers. And one of the biggest things about mainstream retailers, and certainly one of the biggest things that I see that has gone wrong for mainstream retailers, is that they've tried to appeal to too many people at once. So unlike their premium brand counterparts, if we look at, let's take New Look as an example, which is a large fashion retailer in the UK. They have over 600 stores currently. They kind of appeal to everyone/no one. And you'll have heard me say this before about confused minds not buying. Now, I'm 28 years old. Apparently, I am in their target demographic. But I was talking to one of my friends at the weekend, and we were sort of saying, I can't remember the last time I bought anything from New Look. Now, admittedly, when I was, 18, 19, 20, 21 potentially, I used to buy loads of stuff from there. I'd buy leggings, I'd buy tank tops, I'd buy jeans, I'd buy cheap outfits that I could take to clubs and get wine on a night out and not care. Because everything was kind of like 10 to 20 pounds, and it was cheap and it was easy to wear, and it was a knockoff basically of things that were trending in the fashion world, and it was just a cheap version. And then I kind of got a bit older and needed to wear work clothes, and they didn't really sell work clothes as much. So I sort of drifted away from the brand, and they kept me for a little while because they still sold leggings, and, they still sold the odd top that I would go in and look at and think, oh, that's not too bad. And it's only $15, so I'll have it. But it's become a rarer and rarer occurrence. And the simple fact is that they don't actually target one specific audience. If they continue to target that 16 to 25-year-old demographic, and they sold nothing but stiletto heels and, leather look leggings and, the latest fashion trends for super low prices, I don't believe that they'd be struggling right now. And in fact, if we look at the market and if we look at other retailers who do have that demographic, who are providing really, really low priced clothes that are designed to just be kind of throwaway, if we're honest, depending on the fashion trends of the moment, we're seeing that those retailers are actually doing really well. The reason that New Look is suffering is because they've tried to appeal to the 16 to 25 market, but then they've also tried to appeal to the 30 plus market and the 40 plus market. But you can't do all of that in one store, especially not a store that's also catering to men. Okay, so they also have a men's brand. So it's just not specific. And if you don't have a specific ideal client, it is actually a lot harder to make money. And I've said this time and time again, so if you've heard it before, I'm really sorry that it bores you, but you will make more money starting with one ideal client and expanding over time. As you master one ideal client, you can bring on another type of ideal client and another type. And as you manage and master those processes, it becomes much easier and you grow at a sustainable rate. But you can't do it all at once. And, I'm going to talk about this in the next point, but the real key issue, and even the investors and the people who have been dealing with the New Look issues have said that their biggest problem is that their demographic has become blurry. And so, in trying to appeal to everyone, they actually appeal to no one. And then what's happened is that everyone's kind of like, oh, have you been to New Look? And people are genuinely upset. Oh God, New Look's shutting down. But at the same time, when you actually talk about it and you have a conversation and you think, well, when was the last time I bought anything from there? Nobody can remember. Okay. Because their ideal client is not clear, because their demographic is not clear, it makes it really, really difficult for people when they are wandering around, when they are shopping, to think, actually, why should I go to New Look? What is the USP to get me inside that store instead of inside somewhere else? And Toys R Us have done the same thing. Okay, Toys R Us, again, large brand, very well known, actually really well established. again, have had exactly the same problem. You know, they created a mass of brands. Their profits were low, rents were high, and again, the demographic went a little bit wonky. And so again, they've experienced this dip in revenue. And it's really unfortunate. I actually love Toys R Us as a brand, and I can still sing the Christmas adverts, and I will be devastated this year when that familiar jingle, the Toys R Us jingle, is not on television. But at the same time, had it been caught earlier, they could have scaled things back. They could have gone back to one demographic. And it just wasn't caught in time. You know, the amount of debt that some of these companies are in is absolutely phenomenal. So in terms of where you are with your business and where this puts you, it means that we have to look at where are you sitting in the market at the moment. You know, are you appealing really strongly to one ideal client, or are you trying to mix your messages and, you know, approach different people at different levels, even though you're not bringing in the cash flow right now that you wanted to? And if that's the case, you need to stop. You need to really rethink that and focus on targeting one specific ideal client to bring in the cash flow and expand over time. Don't try and do it all at once, because as you can see, it really doesn't work. Even if you are an established business, you need to have that ideal client you need to be speaking to. It needs to be a clear and cohesive message. Otherwise, people think of you like New Look. Oh, we really like Jess, but can't remember the last time I bought from her. Okay. Now, the second point on that, and we've touched upon it a little bit, is about expansion. So if we look at these mainstream retailers, if we look at Toys R Us, if we look at New Look, we're looking at places, and any of the restaurant businesses, actually, I want to put those in there as well. They've actually expanded really quickly. And so they've done a couple of different types of expansion. One is premises. So a lot of them, like New Look, has over 600 stores. That's an awful lot in the UK, which is actually a relatively small country. But I can tell you that I live in a major city, so I live in Southampton, and I can tell you that every single town near me has a New Look. Okay, even the tiny places that are more like villages have a New Look. And in all honesty, the footfall just isn't there. They have these huge properties which are causing huge rent costs and not enough footfall, not enough traffic. And the traffic that is coming in is not targeted. So they're not always guaranteed to buy, which means that they're paying wages, they're paying rent, they're paying insurance, they're paying lots and lots of different things on buildings, but not guaranteeing buyers because they don't have all the different things that we were just talking about. So expanding is a big deal, okay? And it is a big deal. And when we look at premium brands, they expand too. They do go and buy stores. And in fact, you will find that most premium brands have got stores in places where the rents are exponentially higher, I can pretty much guarantee, than what New Look are paying for somewhere, you know, out in the sticks. However, they don't expand without clear proof. So one of the things that happened a few years ago was that designer outlets became really, really popular. And companies like Value Retail did incredibly well because they basically took the risk and they would find these places and areas in the UK and in Europe, and they would put these designer outlets there and just invite companies like Louis Vuitton, like La Perla, like UGG, to come and set up a store there and effectively bring them traffic. So they used to even do this really cool thing where they would get tourist parties, tourist shopping parties, and they'd have people from Asia, they'd have people from Australia who would actually fly to the UK, to Europe, have a nice holiday and incorporate like 2 or 3 days of shopping in designer outlets and enjoying that experience. That's a huge difference when it comes to expansion for these companies because these premium brands could guarantee revenue. Oh, great, you're going to bring me customers, you're going to deliver them every single month. Fantastic. We only need to sell a few things and then actually the rent's covered, the wages are covered, and everything else is profit. And if you can guarantee the right traffic, it's pretty easy for us to assume that we're going to make the right sales. The other thing that premium brands do is that they have major stockists, again, in places that can help put them in front of ideal clients. So if we look at department stores, famous department stores, Bloomingdale's, Harrods, Selfridges, those kinds of organizations, they all have departments like luxury handbags, luxury footwear, menswear, women's wear. They'll have pretty much everything, and they'll be sectioned again, and they'll have all of the designer brands laid out. Now, again, this makes sense for premium brands. They're going into another company as a stockist, and that company has all of the ideal clients that they could possibly need to be affiliated with so that they can generate solid revenue. Now, yeah, they're going to have to pay out for a couple of salespeople. Sure, that's going to happen. They might even have to pay rent space or floor space in the building or in the organization itself. But they are ultimately getting a steady stream of traffic every single day that is their ideal client, that are people who are looking for what they're selling, and they're much, much more likely to increase their sales. What we see with mainstream retailers, so what we're seeing, and when I say mainstream, I mean this kind of like mid-range brand section. So we've got New Look, we've got Chiquitos, we've got Prezzo, we've got Toys R Us. None of them are brands that aren't identifiable. You know, I know all of them, and I've been to at least one of all of them, and I've bought from them, but they're not premium brands. They're not brands that stand out and I think, oh, well, if I carry a New Look bag versus a Mulberry, people are going to see me differently. It's not like that at all. And what they've done, these mainstream retailers, this mid-range retailers and restaurants, is that they've expanded, not without proof, but they've expanded in a really good time. So when people, back as we were coming out of the recession, people were spending more money eating out. People were spending more money on throwaway clothes because they could. They felt like it was financially secure and that they were able to do that and they were happy to. But they expanded into areas that potentially gave them more costs than it did ideal clients. So a lot of them expanded into new premises, getting new stores, rather than saying, where else could stock our brand? And when you are a mid-range brand, it's actually really hard to find people to affiliate with, because if you look at, you know, your mid-range department stores, they've already got their own brand and it's already mid-range. So it's really hard to find companies to affiliate with. Unlike premium brands, where the big draw of going to somewhere like Harrods is that you are surrounded by luxury fashion, you're surrounded by luxury skincare, you're surrounded by luxury food. And it's a whole experience. It's really difficult for mid-range retailers to do that. And again, it's this idea that they're trying to appeal to everyone, and in doing that, they don't appeal to anyone. Now, the lesson that we take here, because really this was a mass case of shiny object syndrome, right? Lots of premises were available because we'd just been through a recession. Lots of businesses had unfortunately floundered during that. So suddenly there were lots of stores available. There were lots of stores without companies, and it made it really, really easy for, you know, these businesses to get stores, to go in, to put in another Toys R Us, another New Look, another Prezzo, another whatever. Unfortunately, long term, it didn't look like they'd always necessarily thought about where were they guaranteed the most footfall. Now, you're always going to be guaranteed footfall in a city, and in a city, you know, you can pretty much get away with not having a super specific ideal client because you're going to get so much traffic. But in these smaller towns, in these village places, actually people want what they want, and they're much more likely to go in their car, to get a train, you know, to go and find the item that they're looking for, rather than just putting up with what's available. So it was almost like they had this shiny object syndrome for expansion, and just kind of thought, right, we've got through the recession, let's rapidly expand, let's rapidly grow, and we'll just get more customers. The reality is that doesn't really work. When you're building your brand, when you're building your sales process, you must expand, obviously, in order to make more money. But you've got to think really carefully and really hard about how you actually want to do that, and whether that cost of the expansion is going to be more than the long-term gain. Okay. Now, I see this really often in the online world. I see people who will do things a little bit out of sync, and they're trying to expand before they've actually started converting properly. So my old boss in corporate would say that people try and run before they walk. And it's exactly the same when you're setting up a business. I see lots of people who start with low ticket, high volume products. lots of people go, I'm going to go and write a book because it'll make me really credible and I can potentially put the book in a bookshop and I can have a #1 bestseller. I can tell you that the majority of my revenue is never going to be made through the sales price of my book, because the actual money that Amazon pays me is so low that I couldn't live on it if I wanted to. Okay. And that's with selling a considerable amount of books every day. Still doesn't matter. Okay. It's not making a huge difference to my bottom line, that one product. And unfortunately, that's what we see a lot of the time in the online space, is that people will start trying to build credibility without having the cash behind them. So we'll see lots of people who'll start by selling $20 downloadable products. We'll see people who write a book very early on, and then they might not necessarily get it to the bestseller status that they want because they don't have a big enough audience. We see people hosting or holding events and paying huge amounts for upfront costs of events and then not being able to fill them or not being able to generate profit off of the back end. Now, it's not to scare anyone. Okay, it really isn't. You can make money however you want to online. Believe me, there is nothing out there that you could not monetize. But you've got to do it in the right way for you. You've got to do it in the right way for your business. And what I want and would encourage everyone to do at the current time is to look at, am I investing time, money, and energy into shiny objects that I feel like I want, but actually I don't probably need and are distracting me from the key focuses in my business right now? So last week's episode was all about understanding where you are in business right now and what that means you need to focus on. If you haven't listened to that episode, go and check it out. Find out how you can identify where you are, look at what you need to focus on, and then look at all of the courses that you're potentially investing in. Look at all the time you're spending doing your branding, doing your website, doing other things, copywriting, blah, 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 that actually you may not need to spend time on right now if your key focus is cash. All right. Or if your key focus is visibility, probably the worst thing to spend your time on is sitting binging on Netflix all day and calling it learning and development. Okay. That's your second point. Your second action point is looking at what you're actually investing in. Are you expanding in the right way for you? Because honestly, you can run a webinar and you can make money. You can run a challenge and make money. You can use any of the tools out there. But the important thing is that you're expanding before you're getting this shiny object of, now I want to write a book. Now I want to speak, or host an event with 1,000 people, and not yet having the right systems and structures in place to support the sales of that and to support the ultimate goal of that happening. And then finally, we need to look at sales, obviously. So selling is kind of a really important point about this whole process. And I've just realized as I'm saying this, I haven't laughed that much during this podcast. I feel like I genuinely am really attached to the outcomes of the high street retailers now. I genuinely am really attached to losing parts of the high street, because I think it's a real shame. And I think that, in all honesty, having online businesses has made it really difficult for high street retailers to do well. It really has been challenging for them, because online businesses can compete on price, we can compete on shipping costs, we can not pay rent. Like, there are lots and lots of things that when you run an online business, you don't have to worry about. But an in-person or a high street retailer does, and it makes their life really, really difficult. And it actually means that they have to sell more. So the interesting thing for me is that premium brands sell really well. Okay. And it's not that they sit back and go, oh, I'm Gucci, so, just buy my thing. They don't do that. Premium brands have a great sales experience. How many times have you walked into Apple? Okay. Now, Apple are a premium brand. I don't care what anyone says. Apple are a premium brand. And when you walk into Apple, someone will come over to you. And yes, they'll be wearing jeans. And yes, they'll be an Apple geek or whatever they call them. I don't know what the correct terminology is. But they'll come over to you and they'll say, what would you like help with? And within the space of about 3 minutes of being in the store, you've been asked what you'd like to help with. You've been assigned an Apple person who will come over and help you if they aren't already helping you. And you get this great service. And it's something that premium brands do really well. they really go in for selling as a service. If you walk into Mulberry, so I went into Mulberry in Covent Garden recently. Mulberry is a luxury brand. It sells handbags and it sells wallets and scarves, and over the years they've kind of expanded out into a few other things. But I went to Mulberry in Covent Garden because I love it, and I was looking at purses, and honestly went in, how can we help you? Is there anything that you'd like to look at? Are you looking for a specific color? Are you looking for a specific size? Do you have anything else that you need to match it to? They'll walk you around the store and show you different items that meet your needs. They'll really take the time to make you feel welcome and make you feel like you're enjoying the experience. And as a result, you are way more likely to buy because you feel like you've had this great experience. Another company that does it really well is Dermalogica. So I will only buy Dermalogica skincare products, and it drives my other half nuts because typically Dermalogica skincare products are about 3 times the price of anything else. But I buy them for 2 reasons. One, they are actually really good for my skin. So great, they work. Could I find something else that also works like Nivea that is, again, 1/3 of the price? Quite possibly. However, I'll never ever leave Dermalogica because I know that the products last about 3 months. And every 3 months, I'll go into Dermalogica and I'll say, hi, I need to buy, and I'll rattle off whatever it is that I need filling up on. And every single time they'll sit me down at the counter and they'll put one of those weird little hairbands over my head and they'll say, we're going to give you a skin analysis. And it's free. We're going to give you this free skin analysis. And they go over your face with this weird little magnifying glass and this weird head torch thing. And they'll basically tell you about your skin and what's right with it and what's not great with it. And it's actually a great sales experience because I feel like they care. And every time they update my little record and they say, okay, what's your name? And I'll give them my name and my address. And they'll tell me, oh, this is how your skin's changed from last time. And actually, it's probably better that you try this product than this one, or stick with the products that you've already got. And it's fantastic because I know that I'm going to get this fantastic service. I'll go back and I'll pay over the odds because I enjoy it. Okay, because it is that feeling of I'm valued, I'm wanted as a customer, I enjoy the experience, and that's what I'm paying for. Okay, and some people tell you you're paying for the label, and in some cases you are, but I firmly believe that with a premium brand, you're paying for the service. Now, when I go into, let's say, Toys R Us, I don't get a service. If I'm lucky, I can find a member of staff, but that's it. Generally, in high street brands, the staff's focus is much more on getting stock in the place it needs to be than it is on selling to the customer. So what they will spend their time on often in high street retailers is, has this shelf been stocked? Is this particular item out? Have you gone and sorted out the back end room and all of this kind of thing? And what that means is that they're using their key touch point with the customer to actually repel the customer. Because every time you're a customer in one of these places, you don't feel wanted. When you ask a question and that member of staff has to stop what they're doing, inevitably you'll get a member of staff that says, I'll go and look out the back for you when you ask for another size. Or when you ask somebody where something is, they'll say, well, if it's not out on the shelf, then we don't have any. And that's not always necessarily true. Okay, I feel like that's a big myth. I don't feel like stock rooms are just there empty. But it does mean that customers often get really frustrated. They'll go into high street retailers and be like, oh, for God's sake, it's painful. It's a painful experience. You can't find anything. When you ask the salesperson where it is or what you assume to be the salesperson, they get really narky with you because actually their boss is yelling at them to go and fill the stock room or to make sure that there are pallets out or to make sure that all the other things are done. And there's no designated customer care role apart from the person on the checkout who's just there to take your money. And in all honesty, a lot of the time you won't even get a conversation from them. You're not walking up to the checkout really excited about your purchases and they're saying, how was your day? Have you had a great time? You'll get the odd person that does that. But there's not really a huge experience about shopping in a high street retailer. And that's why people have stopped doing it. Because at the end of the day, if I can be ignored in a high street retailer where I've had to pay for parking, where I've had to get up and actually put pants on to go there in the first place and all this kind of thing. Why don't I just sit at home and not have to talk to anyone, in my pants, not pay parking, and just get it delivered to my door for convenience? So what we want to be thinking about in the online space and running our own businesses is, how are we making our customer relevant to our sales process? Are we actually focusing on our customers? What are we doing every day that makes them feel really good? Whether they're a prospective client or whether they're a fully paid up client, it doesn't matter. What are we doing every day to make them feel really good about the investments they're making, about the services they're buying? Because if we're not doing those things, if we're focusing on irrelevant tasks, if we're always focusing on rebranding or our copy on our website or making a new social media graphic, we're actually taking away the major touch points that help connect people to us and help us make sales in our businesses. And I don't want anyone to be doing that. I want people to make sure that their sales processes are customer centric, because when your sales process is customer centric, you will not go out of business, because your customers will always want to come back. They're always going to be loyal to you. If they feel that every time they do, they're rewarded with a good experience. They're rewarded with good service. They get something that they actually need and want. Okay, so that's my kind of thought on the the current state of the high street, if you like. If you ask somebody that's in the media and you think, actually, Jess, that made 0 sense, or that made a lot of sense, and you want me to comment on it, please let me know. But my main point here is that for all of us running these businesses, we need to be thinking about 3 things. 1, is our ideal client clear, and do they feel like we're talking to them? 2, are we investing in expansions and investments in our business that are actually going to make a difference to our profit margin? Or are we focusing on shiny objects that we want but we don't actually need and are probably distracting us from our key focuses? And 3, are we focusing on our customers? Are we making them feel good? Are we running a client-centric sales process, and do they feel good about buying from us? Or are we focusing on irrelevant tasks that are taking our touch points away and stopping us making more sales? So if you've enjoyed today's episode, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and that you leave us a little review so you don't miss any more episodes, and so that we can hear how we're getting on and whether or not I'm giving you all the information that you find interesting and that you need when it comes to sales. And make sure that you download the new logins for the membership site, so you can go in, you can grab cheat sheets from today's episodes and from other episodes. So if there is anything that you need to be reminded of or that you want to work through, you can go and grab all of those for free. And if you want to continue the conversation, you can also come into the Facebook group, where a lot of you are joining me, so I'm really, really chuffed about that, which is the Smart Leaders Sales Society over on Facebook. Hopefully I will see you in the next episode, and I'm really, really excited about this week's guest. Just throwing that one out there. I'll see you soon.